A man who willingly gives up a little liberty for a little safety will lose both. I'm roughly paraphrasing that statement, but that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and today we're going to talk about the concept of liberty versus safety. And despite, let's put it this way, there's many philosophical camps on this. I fall into the philosophical camp that safety and liberty are opposing ideas, not because they necessarily are things that we shouldn't desire, but they are opposing ideas because you cannot have one 100% and the other 100%. What do I mean? Let me explain. As I often say, let me explain. That's why you're listening to the podcast, is for me to explain the nonsense that is spewing out of my mouth. I appreciate all of you who listen to me spew nonsense. We picked up another subscriber. We're back up to 21. It's a good day for me. I'd like to say that having subscribers doesn't stroke my ego. It does, and it continues to bring me back to my microphone to say things. Does it move my ego enough to actually go to the podcast studio that's in my building that would probably be a much better place to film these things? No, because I'm a lazy SOB. We are what we are. We deal with it. We move forward. Anyway, safety and liberty are opposing ideas. A world of 100% liberty. You can do anything you want. There are no rules. There are no restrictions. There are no police. There's no government. You do everything that you want. Somebody comes along with a knife and holds you up. Who do you call? You are at your own liberty to protect yourself, but you can't call anyone to help you. You are 100% free. You are 0% safe. Let's say you live in a world of 100% safety. You live in a padded room. In that padded room, you are 100% safe. Nothing can hurt you. You have no liberty. You are completely safe and completely not free. Now, obviously, those are extreme examples, and anybody would wisely say that you're never going to live in a world of 100% liberty or 100% safety, because that's silly, right? There have to be governments to organize things like roads, public schools, those sorts of things. And in economics, they talk about the community property problem. In an area where you have, let's say, no government and you have a bunch of people who live around a pasture that nobody really owns, but everybody is free to use, there's no regulating body to protect that pasture and force people to upkeep it, which means that there's no cost to just use it until it's exhausted. And then nobody has the pasture. There's reasons you want less liberty. There's reasons you're willing to give up some liberty for some protection. Again, police officers are sort of the simplest example of you giving up some liberty for some protection, for some safety. Because if you were at your liberty, you could drive as fast as you wanted on the roads. We've given that up as a society because it makes sense for us to do that. But where do we get too far with these sorts of things? We here at 10 Minutes with Nick do our best to not subscribe, well, to any other podcast, because we are a podcast. But we do our best to balance the way we're looking at things, right? For example, we didn't do a 9/11 podcast because there really wasn't anything that snarky me could add to that conversation, because it really is just a day of remembrance for the victims who lost their lives, the first responders who lost their lives, and for the heroes of that day, first responder and civilian alike. We can talk about, though, safely farther on, some of the results that happened from that day and the liberties that we lost as a result of that awful terrorist attack. Number one I can tell you about is the Patriot Act. If you don't know what the Patriot Act is, you're probably Gen Z or Gen Alpha, and it's just not something you think about because, again, 9/11 is in the past for you. I don't know why I said again as though I said it before. I'm going to say it now. You're probably Gen Z or Gen Alpha. 9/11 is a historical event for you. It's not something that you necessarily have implanted in your mind. The Patriot Act is a massive, and in my opinion, massive overreach of federal government power that greatly curbs your right to privacy under the guise of additional safety. The Patriot Act essentially gives the government limitless power to obtain a warrant in a secret court and take your information, wiretap you, detain you, all these sorts of things in the name of keeping society safe. Massive, massive overreach, in my opinion, but it exists. This was a trade-off, and what was seen at the time as an appropriate trade-off between safety and liberty. So we've gone from the basic example that we can all agree with, the speeding example, to what I see and what many people see as a massive overreach on a higher level, which is the Patriot Act. This is the fundamental give and take that requires us to be very active in our government, and not just active at the executive branch level of government. We're going to get around to talking about voting. This is fun, especially as we're coming up to an election year. We're always coming up to an election year, FYI. The president signed the Patriot Act into law. He did not create it spontaneously. It was created by the legislative branch. Now, it's been challenged numerous times, and the Patriot Act, through court challenges, through the judicial branch, has been shaped and bullied and put into a new form. But the legislative branch is the branch that matters for this kind of stuff, for the stuff that's slow creeps on liberty in the name of safety. And that's really what concerns myself and what concerns other people. Not so much that liberty and safety have to have trade-offs. They do. You need police because there are bad actors, or there are people who are desperate, or, people who are desperate will do things. Some people, they grow up in a bad neighborhood, and it's just what you do in that neighborhood. Ideally, police are not throwing these people in jail left and right. There are programs to help, but at some point, you need to have police. You need to trade a little bit of your edge of liberty for your safety. But if you're not keeping up on the legislative branches at all levels of government, you could look up one day and see that the Fifth Amendment is gone. And the Fifth Amendment is your right to not incriminate yourself, but it covers a lot more territory than that, the Fourth and Fifth Amendment together. There's an example of this, essentially and there's also executive overreach as well, right? We'll get to an executive overreach example in a minute. But you want to pay attention to how much liberty you're giving up for safety. You do. It's just important. The legislative branch is the first place you want to look to make sure that you have representatives who are doing a good job of policing that balance. But you also need to watch the executive branch because, as we recently saw in New Mexico, the New Mexican governor, under the guise of a public health emergency, suspended the Second Amendment. The argument here is not whether or not the Second Amendment should be a fundamental right. The courts have ruled that the Second Amendment is a fundamental right under the Bill of Rights. That is a terrifying precedent. Terrifying. Because what the governor of New Mexico just did was swoop in and say, the Bill of Rights no longer, like this particular right in the Bill of Rights no longer matters. If you can do it for one, you can do it for every other right. And numerous gun law advocates actually agreed with that assessment. They said, this is ridiculous. You can't just do this. You need to watch out. Not because the governor of New Mexico or that legislative branch are evil, not because they're a deep state, not because there's some sort of conspiracy, but because people do things and they're human. They not only make mistakes, they react to situations. And all laws are, by their very nature, reactive, and they are punishments, not prevention. They don't prevent crimes from happening, but they're meant to create a punishment if the crime does happen. Or they're meant to, it's reactive, not proactive. And that's what you need to remember. And that's why you need to watch out for your own liberty. This was a really rambling 10 minutes with Nick. Listen, I could go on and on about liberty and safety, and more importantly, why liberty is so important. I'll probably go back into it. Don't mistake me. I'm not throwing out that, I'm not throwing out that I'm in the red pill community. I'm not throwing out that you need to go to New Hampshire and live in the don't tread on me state. Just be aware. And vote. That's the only way you change things at the end of the day, is voting. Get out there, vote for the legislative branches so they can curb the executive branches and we can prevent the slow erosion of our rights. Will it work? I don't know. If you like what I said, like and subscribe. If you don't like what I said, like and subscribe anyway. Then you can subscribe and listen to me and hate me. It'd be fun. Fun for you. Fun for me. We'll all win. Or at least I will. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.